Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewire To Inspire. The show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewire To Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to my podcast, Rewire To Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am so excited to be jumping on the microphone with you all for episode number 126. If you missed my last episode, number 125, we chatted about all things choices, decision-making, present self versus future self. If you are someone who finds yourself tossed between two decisions often and not really knowing which choice is most optimal, I definitely encourage you to check out that episode. For today, episode number 126, as mentioned in the last episode, we're going to be continuing with focusing on contemplation, with raising our self-awareness. I've come to the realization through coaching and through doing therapy, through my own journey, through growth, through reading, through all the things, that the best, most optimal, and really only way to grow and evolve is by raising our self-awareness. The way we raise our self-awareness is through contemplation. It is through asking ourselves questions. It is through getting to know our truth, assessing ourselves, scanning ourselves, learning from ourselves, learning from our past. And so I recognize that, yes, growth is important. But if your self-awareness is inaccurate, how are you ever to be sure that you're growing in the right way? You're growing in the right area. And so my goal of today is through these 3 life-changing questions for you to leave with some new awareness, some new areas to contemplate, maybe some next steps. I have clients tell me all the time, friends, whoever, I hear this question all the time. I don't know what's next. I don't know what that next move is. I don't know what I need to do next to trickle what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel stuck. A great thing that we can do when we feel stuck is to stop and to assess, to reflect, to ask ourselves hard questions. Because every time that we reflect, we raise our awareness, which often indicates or points to a part of us that represents what we're passionate about. It gives us a clue into maybe some areas we want to focus on next. And so whenever you're stuck, know that even just being stuck in and of itself is a lesson. But my goal of today is for these 3 questions to slightly shake your snow globe, to get you to contemplate. And I want you to know that this is a journey for just yourself. You don't have to include anybody in this journey. You can keep this 100% private. In fact, for a lot of these questions, for all 3 of them really, they should be self-focused. Because in order to accurately assess them, you need to be honest with yourself. And when we have external factors, partners, friends, family, whatever, influencing how we respond to these questions, we're really viewing ourselves in a way that isn't optimal for us, but optimal to keep the peace with those in our life, which might actually be a part of the issue in retrospect. So without further ado, let's get into the first question. The first question is a heavy question. And this question in and of itself could take you weeks, months, years, your life to truly answer. And that is there pain in my past that deserves to be healed? When I started working at the Sexual Assault Healing Center in 2019, I had finished getting my social work diploma. I had worked 2 other positions in the social work field, and I was ready to take on this new position. And I would have been around 19-ish years old at this time, 19, 20-ish years old. And I thought I had no trauma. I didn't think I knew I had some experiences that were hurtful and that upset me, but I never viewed myself as somebody who had trauma. And that's also in hindsight because I didn't really understand what trauma was, the depths of it, how much it impacts us in different ways. And I never had that education or awareness. So I just thought, in a lot of ways, I had nothing to work through. That wasn't until I started to learn more about my position of what I was going to be teaching my one-on-one clients, what I was going to be working on them with, what I was going to be working with them on, the subjects we were going to be covering, the tools we were going to be using. And I remember after a couple of weeks of this job, of just learning through osmosis from my coworkers and from hearing client case stories and learning from my supervisor, the books I was reading, the videos I was watching, the trainings I was taking, I remember I was like, oh my God, I have so much more pain in my past than I ever realized. And as I continued with that job, and this all happened through the pandemic, and as I continued to have more clients and hear more stories and found myself relating more and more and more to these clients' stories, I knew I was in trouble in a way. It had gotten so bad after the 2 years that I had to step away from the position because I realized how triggered I was becoming in those sessions. And you can't be the most effective and reliable counselor, support person if you are counter-transferring your emotions and feelings into a session, right? It's not, there's a word that I'm trying to think of that I can't seem to get my tongue onto. That it's gonna drive me nuts now. Basically, it would be unethical is the word I'm trying to think of. I was unethical at a sense where I knew that going into those sessions, I was already feeling overwhelmed out of my body. My past was coming up. And so I knew I had to step away. And at that time, I had to ask myself this exact question. Is there pain from my past that deserves to be healed? Because the thing that was happening in hindsight is as I was unloading and unpacking all these stories for my clients, I realized that I was kind of simultaneously doing the same thing for myself without realizing it. And then as one started to come up, more started to come up. And trauma works in that way where if we suppress and suppress and suppress and suppress, eventually it has nowhere to go but to come out. And because I was already doing so much of the work, my body in a way felt safe for it to come out. But I had never really validated for myself that I needed to heal and I had stuff that needed tended to. So where in your life do you think that you potentially carry pain from an experiences that deserve to be healed? They deserve to be tended to. They deserve to be loved on. They deserve to be processed, understood, so that you can live a better, more fulfilling life. Because trauma will stay in our body. Experiences stay in our body and they come out sometimes in ways that we don't realize it's that part of us controlling us, but it is. But if we haven't built a relationship with our pain and with our past, it's likely controlling you in one way, shape, or form. And so the goal of this question isn't for you to dive in head first, because that can be a really scary thing to do, especially if you've never dove into your past. The goal of this is for you to just have conscious awareness that you likely do have stuff in your past that you haven't healed. The best way that we can heal that is by asking ourselves that question. It is by seeing a therapist, seeing a counselor, talking to someone, contemplating. One thing that we did when I was studying social work is we did a life map. Whatever your age is, all the way to 0. And each year, I want you to think of something that happened that year. And I remember there were certain ages that I was like, oh God, I forgot that happened. The good, bad, and the ugly. We called it a life map. And then this was a practice I did with my clients as well, because I wanted to see when some of their deepest traumas happened, at which age that happened. So I could then go and learn, what development stage is the brain in at that time? What are we potentially looking at now because of the effects of that? Childhood trauma affects us in so many ways that we don't realize. And maybe by getting curious and opening that door, you might actually be able to give your adult self permission to heal, of knowing that some of the tendencies and ways that you are protectors because of past pain that you've experienced. And so that is the first question, you guys. Is there pain from my past that deserves to be healed? And what does that mean for me? What could that mean for me? Am I willing to explore that, to get curious about that, to see what that could mean for me? Second question, how do I truly feel about myself? Do I know my true values, my passions? Do I know what lightens me up? Do I know what fulfills me? Do I know what drives me? How much do you truly feel you know about yourself? I only really started to learn about Jessie at the core 2 years ago when I moved into an apartment by myself for the first time. During these 2 years and I did have a partner live with me for a while, but for most of it, I was by myself. And it was the first time in my life where I was left to contemplate, to sit with what it was like to be alone, to get to know myself. When you live by yourself and when you spend time with yourself, it can be really hard in the beginning, but it also allowed me to identify how I truly feel about myself. I was able to pay attention to the thoughts I was telling myself because there was nobody else around to block out those voices. I had to get to know what foods I liked. I had to get to know what my routine was, what my schedule was like, which chores I like to do, which ones I don't really like to do, but I know I have to do. I had to really get to know myself. Are you someone who maybe life has passed by and you haven't taken the time to get to know yourself? Well, I'm so happy that you're here because this episode is going to give you a deep dive into self-awareness and getting to know yourself. Getting to know what your values and passions are is something that only you can answer for yourself. It is a journey we can only uniquely embark on. Yes, our friends and family can influence that and they can give us clues into the things that we're interested in. But I realized that spending time with myself, I was able to dive into the things that I actually like, not the things that I pretended to like just to keep certain people around or to keep certain people happy. But I have to be okay with that. What areas of your life do you feel you're dimming your light just because the people around you might not enjoy the things that you do? Where is it that you're sacrificing your own happiness to keep everybody else happy? This question is really best friends with self-awareness. And it's so important that we take time to get to know ourselves. How do we know if we're truly fulfilled, living the most aligned life if we don't even know ourselves? We can think that we're going in the right direction, but our intuition and hindsight is pulling us in a completely different direction. But when we become safe, we feel like, everything we have right now is just safe. We have our partner, we have our house, we have our job. I don't dare take a leap of faith and mess that up. But if you're not happy, the answer to that is to get to know yourself, discover who you are. I've heard it since I was a little girl. I remember I was doing Girl Guides, and I remember this older woman shared with me at the time, you don't really get to know yourself till you're in your 50s. And I've never forgotten that. I was like, what do you mean? In my 50s, shouldn't I know myself now? And I still remember that to this day, and I would have been around 12 years old at this time. And so I've always been curious about that thought of, I just want to know me. I want to know what I like, what I'm passionate about, what my unique purpose is here on earth. Because despite what your religion or your background or your beliefs are, we are all here for a reason, for a purpose. Your purpose is different than my purpose. But if I'm living my life in your shadow trying to follow your purpose, guess who's always going to be less fulfilled? If you're watching on video, you can see my hands up. If you're watching audio, my hand is up. You will always feel like you're following somebody else. And we can have this in different areas of our life, right? We can have times where we feel more fulfilled than others. We feel more in alignment than others. And those are clues. Again, the goal of this question is for you to assess, how do you truly feel about yourself? Do you feel like you truly know you for you, or you only know you through the narratives and the stories that other people have painted about you? Do you still remember something someone's told you and you now carry that about your identity? Identity is a huge word. It's a huge, huge word we have to ask ourselves when we're asking about ourselves. What is your identity you hold about yourself? Is it accurate? Are you okay with it? Are you friends with it? Do you want to build a better relationship with it? Do you want to get to know it better? Again, all these questions are amazing because it's never too late to answer them. It is never too late to get to know yourself better. It is never too late to heal your past. Okay? It is never too late. So that is question number 2. How do I truly feel about myself? Do I know my values? Do I know my beliefs? Do I know my passions? Where are you at with this, with your self-awareness? And the third and final question for you all. Am I allowing others to dictate my happiness, goals, choices in life? Are you allowing others to dictate your happiness? Of all people that I know, I can raise both hands of saying, I am guilty with this. I have lived most of my life dimming my light so that others can shine. I have lived most of my life dimming my light so I do not get lashed out at, so that I do not get ridiculed. A large example of this stemmed from me in high school sports. I remember feeling like I had to lessen my potential all the time because I would always hear comments about, you're trying so hard, you're try hard, oh, you think you're so much better than us. And although it wasn't high extremes, 4 or 5 comments are enough to stick with you. And so I remember I had lessened myself around other people, but by myself, that's when I got to work. Basketball was a big example of this. Shooting hoops pretty much every day, before school, during lunch, after school. That is what made me super happy. But as soon as my teammates got around, I felt like I had to lessen that because I could tell they weren't as passionate about it as me. I can tell they weren't taking it as seriously as me. And it almost made me frustrated. And so it took away from my happiness because I was allowing other people's opinions to lessen my true potential. This still frustrates me to this day because I know that Jessie still does this. I know that I still do this. I allow others, I'm working on this, to dictate my happiness because I lessen who I am around a lot of people. Because I know that if I'm my true self, I won't be understood. I likely will be lonely. People will probably think I'm crazy for the missions and goals that I'm on. And so I lessen myself. There's really only a handful of people that I can think of that I can be my truest, true self with. This is why my last relationship didn't work. It is no fault of his. I just felt like I couldn't be my true self because he didn't get it in a lot of ways. And again, that's no fault of his own. We just weren't on the same page. I want you to assess for yourself, where are you allowing others to dictate your happiness? Are you so hyper conscious of how your parents are going to think of you, how your partner is going to think of you, how they're going to view you if you make a decision? As I've mentioned before, my coach told me, what if what's best for you is what's best for everybody else? What if what's best for you is what's best for the world? I will never, ever, ever lose that mindset and that thought ever in my life. What if what's best for me is what's best for my parents. It is what's best for my future partner. It is what's best for the world. What is that for you? Are you so hyper-focused on how other people will view you that you are stepping away from your happiness? Who are you allowing to dictate how you feel, how you act, how you show up, what you do, what you think, what you believe? If you grew up in a household where everything your parents said you obliged to, or else, you are likely an adult mirroring that in a way that you might not realize. I encourage you guys to ask yourself, if this is your truth, if you do feel like others are dictating your happiness, why? The why beneath that is going to be your answer. If it's from your past, again, then we have to go back to question 1. Is there pain from your past that you have to heal? Everything is simultaneously connected. But you can see how even just these 3 questions could shift our whole life if we were to answer them truly accurately and then pivot our lives accordingly. But if we don't ask the question to get awareness, we're going to constantly feel like we're running in a circle, we're misunderstood, we're not getting right answers. Everything's just going to feel off. Powerful questions, contemplation, not just being okay with things as they are, but being curious of why they are the way they are. That is how we make drastic, impactful changes in our lives. And so I hope you guys enjoyed these 3 life-changing questions. Is there pain in your past that deserves to be healed? How do you truly feel about yourself? And are you allowing others to dictate your happiness? I encourage you to take some time to reflect on those questions. Reflect on them alone, reflect on them uniquely, reflect on them without shame, and just notice and see what happens. If you guys are looking for support with this or with anything else that is in alignment with growing and evolving in mental health, I have a link below to book a free 30-minute call. I would absolutely love to jump on a call with you guys. I'm taking on 1 more trial client. I have 4 clients right now. I upped my roster to 5 people instead of 3. I have 1 spot left to offer a 3-month trial. That always throws me off. 3-month trial. So that would be 6 sessions, 1 call bi-weekly with you guys. If that sounds in alignment for you, I'm not going to sell you anything. There's no obligation after those 3 months are up. My goal is to become a better coach, help you guys optimize and align your life, and see how I can support you on that journey. So thank you guys so much as always. I look forward to chatting with you all next week. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at Jessie Brown 13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.